Okay, in this lesson, we're going to be talking about the importance of using digital forms. So what do I mean by that? So as I've talked about in many different modules, so as an example, a digital form is like an inquiry form that you might find on a web page, on the landing page, where the prospective parent clicks on an ad, comes to a landing page, and fills out a digital form. Digital forms can be used in pretty much any scenario that you would use paper. So I just want to talk about what are the benefits of using digital forms. As much as possible, schools should be using digital forms rather than paper forms. Now, a lot of states have certain forms that might have to be done on paper, but usually it's just one or two at most. And oftentimes, depending on the state, you can still convert that to be a digital form. There's a lot of different digital form tools out there, but what I want to suggest is that the benefits of using digital forms are they're incredible. If you think about how much time goes into just paperwork management. So I'll tell you a story. So we had a customer at Hubley that when they signed up with us, before they signed up with us, they were sending out every year a parent packet, and it was a stack of, I think about 30 sheets of paper that would go out to every family per child. And so some families had 2 or even 3 kids where they had this stack of paper. It's almost 100 sheets of paper that they were getting from the school. And either the school had to mail it out or had to physically hand it to the parents. Regardless, there's time and resources going into just getting that stack of paper to the parents. And that stack of paper costs money because you have to buy the paper and you have to print everything. So if you're doing it, if you've got printer ink is just really expensive. So if you have a lot of students, you go through ink pretty fast, and that's it's like almost $100 every time you need to refill the photocopier, and then you got to get it to the parents. Then the parents have to thumb through all of these sheets of paper and fill out the information by hand, which they absolutely do not enjoy doing. And by the time they get through one stack, even if they only have one kid, you can barely read their handwriting at the end. They're not checking off all the boxes that you need them to check off because you can't force them to do that with a pen and paper. And especially if they've got 3 kids, let's say, then man, that parent is not enjoying that process. Let's just put it that way. And then after that, you have to collect those forms from the parents. So let's say you have 100 kids, enrolled. So that's 100 different stacks of 30 sheets of paper you have to get back from the parents in a timely fashion. And then it just kind of starts from there as far as internally what you have to do. Most schools have all these different databases and everything that somebody has to read the form and type it into a database, and hopefully they can read it, and hopefully the handwriting is clear enough, and hopefully the person's not making a typo when they put an email address into one of the 5 to 10 different databases they're typing it into manually, and that's just for one piece of data. So what we're talking about is usually for 1 or 2 people, depending on the size of the school, this whole process is weeks and sometimes months of drudgery. This kind of work is just flat out drudgery. It's just data entry, data transferring, can't read the handwriting, typos. Oh, the parent didn't check off that photo release permission. They didn't say yes or no, so now I got to call them and have them come back in and click, sign it. It's just incredibly time consuming, this kind of process. And I'd like you to understand that does not need to exist at your school at all. So we had a school that was doing that. And then they sign up for Hubly, and so one of our big features at Hubly is digital forms, right? So, so we converted that whole process into digital forms, and all of a sudden, the full-time office administrator and the basically full-time parent volunteer didn't have to do all of that work at all, ever again, because the system sends the forms to the parents, right? And again, this isn't just with Hubly, this is any digital form tool will do this. You know, you send a link, you create the forms digitally, send a link to the parents, they fill it out online. Parents are, you know, the demographic of parents coming into a Montessori school today are much better and faster at typing than they are handwriting, because that's how they do everything else, right? I hardly ever do any handwriting. I actually cherish the moments that I get to handwrite these days, and use my cursive skills, which you know, but I'm even older than the average, you know, parent coming in for a Montessori school these days. So. So they prefer that. And then also that information, when they type it into a digital form, let's say you make the information required. So if they forget or they skip something, it tells them. It's like, oh, you got to go back and do that before you can submit the form. All of a sudden, you never have any missing information, and it's typed, so it's not information that you can even, like, you never have to, if you're looking at the information when it gets submitted, it's always there. But here's the other amazing thing. When it comes in from a digital form, it's in a database already. So you don't have to type it into anything else, right? One database can talk to another database. You know, you can just export the data and import it if you have to use multiple databases, which that's another topic I think you should stay away from. There are ways of centralizing everything. So when you fill out the digital forms, the job is done. So all you have to do, your job, is to send the form to the parent. So once the form's built, you just get a list of parents and you send them all the same link. They all go to the form, and you should have a system that, you know, allows that tracks who is or isn't filling out the form. So all you have to do is just send a reminder to some of the parents. There should just be one click to send a reminder to the parents who needs to fill it out. But at that point, all of those weeks and months of manual reading, bad handwriting, and missed data points, and manually typing things in, that information into multiple places, with every time you type it in, you've got an opportunity for a typo, and there's like copying, pasting, copying, pasting, copying, pasting. All of these things is just busy work. It's drudgery that, you know, if you use digital forms, that vanishes from your school. And you know, digital forms should, you know, like they really cover all the ground. They can even handle payments. They can handle digital signatures. Everything is covered. And in the rare case, depending on your state regulations, and even sometimes depending on the particular licensor for your school, they might say, well, you know, you can make that form digital, maybe this like medical form or something like that, as long as it covers everything it needs to cover, as long as the parents are filling it out and it's got a signature and all that stuff, it's fine. And as long as you can print it out, you know, of course, any of these forms should be also printable, so that a lot of states want certain forms to be printed out and they're physically. But even if you have to do that, even if your state requires you to have certain forms printed out, the question is, when you want to go looking up information, you don't want to be going to a paper filing cabinet. Because here's a scenario. Let's say you know, you're making an update to your website, and you've got a picture of a bunch of students, and you want to go through all those students in there and make sure you've got photo release permission from the parents to actually, so that you can't get sued by the parent when you put this picture on your public website, of course, right? So the average school, either when they collected the form, or now when they need the information, they have to go take that stack of that parent packet, thumb through to page 15, and check if the box for the photo release permission is a yes or no. And they have to do that for all of those 100 students. And so that could take like an hour, you know, and 2 paper cuts, right? So, and hopefully all of them are checked, and maybe some of them weren't checked, and that's a problem. So sometimes schools will gather that information at the beginning, or sometimes they'll just only look it up when they need to. Irregardless, that was an hour or two, if not more sometimes, of frustrating, drudgery, busy work, just collecting data. Now, if that was all collected by a digital form, it would be seconds to see that. You could easily go in, because digital forms basically all work the same way. All the content, as parents fill out the forms, submit them, it's all entered into a tabular system that you can sort and search and query. So in 2 seconds, you can look up that particular field and see everybody that said yes, click, and then in a few seconds, you can see the whole list of everyone that said yes or no to that particular question on the form. And I mean, that's just like, right there, that's like, that's anywhere from 1 to 3 hours of work that you didn't have to spend doing. And that's just one simple example of what office staff have to do day in and day out. So if you think about the cumulative amount of time you can save when information is entered digitally into a digital database via a digital form, which is what their whole purpose is, then your office is all of a sudden able to do like 4 times as much work with a quarter of the time. Because if you consider, like the average school we talk to, we survey and question schools day in, day out. And on average per 100 students, schools are spending $36,000 a month on managing information and communication between the school and the parents and staff and all that stuff. It's just so much time, and most of that expense is the time that the staff, right? What I'm doing is we're calculating all the staff hours that go into managing all that information. So if you can remove the time that it takes to manage that information or communicate that information or organize it, then you're talking about a massive increase in efficiency with the school. So that's just a huge thing that everybody should understand. Like paper is completely unnecessary for like 99% of the forms and the administrative processes inside of a school. And there's a number of advantages, right? Parents love the digital form experience, especially when they're already enrolled and they go to fill out a form and a lot of the information is already there because they've logged into the system and it already knows them, and that's just great. And staff, who doesn't want to reduce hours of fumbling around with these ever-growing stacks of paper? That's just busy work that is totally unnecessary. So that allows your staff to work on things that are way more valuable for the school, because what happens is perpetually every school we talk to is understaffed, and so usually a lot of times like all of that administrative work either just falls through the cracks, or just doesn't get done well, or people are like literally working but then volunteering like a whole bunch of extra hours just to get the job done. When they might even be just working part-time because that's all the school can afford, but then they're actually working more than full-time hours because they're such great people and they're volunteering and they believe in the school and they just want to see it help. And of course, this information and this management of information for licensing and all that stuff is obviously critical, because if you don't have it, you can be shut down. So it's like you can literally, it has to get done. So somebody's volunteering their time. That's totally unnecessary, So, and I just want to say, like, for a school that's already up and running, we're not talking about replacing anybody with technology, because you're already all doing too much work with your current processes. So what we're talking about is creating the margin in the day so that everybody can not only get their jobs done much easier, but also then have some more time, more margin to work on programming or work on marketing strategies or work on fundraising to build a new building. Anything. There's so many other things that you could better be spending your time doing, you and your staff, rather than like this busy work, thumbing or, moving piles of paper and information from paper to 10 different redundant databases with all of the opportunities for typos. So now, in regards to the marketing strategy, one very important use case is, again, when parents are coming in and they're inquiring, they should be filling out a digital form, right, on the website. Now, that digital form, either it's already connected to an email marketing automation system because you've got something that has it all in one, or most of them connect to many other different sort of standalone tools. So let's say you're even using like Google Forms, like that's Google Digital Forms is one, and then it could send somebody into, like you can link all of these different tools together so that somebody fills out a digital form on Google and it goes into Constant Contact and starts doing the email drip sequence and keeps on inviting that parent to the open house, and 6 months later they come to the open house. So that's the importance of digital tools, but what you want to do is you want to adopt the right ones and make sure that you're using ones that either work with the other tools you like to use or have some type of all-in-one system that kind of does it all. There's a bunch of different all-in-one platforms out there as well. But just digital forms is super critical to schools today because on average schools are low. They're at about a 40% capacity according to all the schools we talk to in our surveys. So one way to get the school in a position to grow and be the school that you want it to be is to not be so busy with busy work. So digital forms is probably your best opportunity to free up your time to focus on marketing, engaging prospective parents, engaging your enrolled parents, keeping the retention up. There's so many things that you can do with your time that are so important and critical that only you can do. So you want to create the margin to do that. And you want to, as much as possible, reduce your reliance on paperwork processes and move to digital forms.